The other day, Donald Trump announced that he would be deploying armed soldiers to the D.C. area, and that if governors wouldn't take care of the riots, he would deploy the military to take care of the problem for them. Many people decried this, mostly people on the left, saying that Donald Trump was threatening to shoot American people, and it's what dictators do. They claimed that he gassed peaceful protesters in order to get a photo shoot. Now, these things are framing devices. It's hard to know what people actually think, especially when journalists sit on Twitter and just write what Twitter's opinion is and not the American people. We want to know what the American people think. Well, we now have a poll from Morning Consult showing that the overwhelming majority of Americans support the National Guard being deployed to shut down these riots. A smaller majority believes the military should be deployed to shut down these riots. Now, in all fairness, we do have a confusing poll from YouGov showing that it is a minority of people, but still a decent amount, 41%, saying the army should be deployed. But the language there is confusing. Suffice it to say, the American people want the National Guard to shut these things down. Because they aren't, Americans have been taking up arms to do it on their own. And there are some horrifying stories coming out, man. We are sitting on the brink of something truly devastating. Perhaps we've already entered the Civil War. I believe we're in the early stages, to be honest. The other day, we heard stories about looters losing their lives. We heard stories about Philadelphia, explosions rocking the city overnight. The official report is that these are people stealing ATMs using explosive devices. But I want to start by showing you what's going on with how the Americans feel, with how the American people feel, based on just this one poll and some confusing data. I know, I'm sorry, it is confusing, but it's important that we read through this and try to understand what it is. And I want to show you a statement from Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has seemed to flip-flopped, criticizing the president, but now threatening to displace Mayor Bill de Blasio. This is New York City, one of the biggest and most prominent cities in the country, if not the. And now we're seeing even the governor, who would criticize Trump's call for the military, say he's going to essentially overthrow the mayor of New York to bring in the National Guard. And then I want to show you how people are responding. A record amount of guns have been sold in May. The Second Amendment has never been stronger. Any argument against it has fallen. And I see the conservatives laughing, but yeah, 40% of the record-breaking 6 million gun purchases were first-time buyers. How many of these people either were anti-2A or uninterested? And how many of them after this are going to say, I want my rights? Let's get started and read about what may happen if these riots continue. The deployment of the military into U.S. cities, potentially Trump invoking the Insurrection Act. This is from Breitbart. Silent majority. Polls show American voters support use of military, National Guard in riots. Now, before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, share this video. I'm competing with the mainstream media, who for some reason has been incessantly defending the riots. I don't know who they're pandering to or they're speaking to. I know that I, as a regular American, to a certain degree, I understand I have a big YouTube channel. I'm not the same as a working class American, but I live in the suburbs, man. I got a backyard. I got a garden. I got friends and family. I want to be safe. I don't like what's going on. It is worrisome, to say the least. It is horrifying to many people in the cities just on the other side of that river from me in Philly, where people there's explosions overnight. The media's been defending this. It's not an exaggeration to say. I mean, I literally have a story. TV journalists defend and excuse nights of rioting. I'm competing against these people. If you think what I have to say and what I'm showing you is important, then please consider sharing this, because I don't have the powerful marketing budget they do. Otherwise, if you just want to watch, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Yeah, I know YouTube makes it hard, but maybe that'll be enough for them to recommend this. But let's read the news from Breitbart. They say, a new poll by Morning Consult found that large majorities of American voters, including a majority of Democrat supporters, back the use of the National Guard to address the riots and protests tearing apart cities around the nation. A smaller majority of Americans supports using the military. The poll backs up the president's claim that a silent majority is on his side in cracking down unrest. Now, I do want to step in and say I'm not entirely sure what the president's claim was. He literally just tweeted silent majority. I think he's saying that they support him. I do. But to be fair, that's my assumption. I mean, he literally just tweeted those words, so who knows what it really means. Richard Hanania tweeted, Washington and the top brass, military would rather fight in the Middle East than keep peace in American cities. Today, poll shows 66% of military favor sending in the troops, with 27% opposed. Among all voters, it's 58-30. This from the Morning Consult. Breitbart says 71% of polled American voters said they support the use of the National Guard to supplement city police forces in addressing protests and demonstrations. The poll did not use the word riots in American cities. Think about that. It did not say riots. Now that to me can be worrying. I like the protests, the real ones. I like the protest in DC where they grabbed the Antifa guy and said, get out of here. We're upset. George Floyd lost his life. This was murder. I know it's bold to say it was, and he's being charged with murder. So I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or argue semantics. Literally, the guy was charged with murder, and we're all upset about it. So these people are protesting, and it seems like people are okay with that protest being shut down. That could be worrying, but let's read more. Of these, 42% of voters said they strongly support the use of the National Guard, and 29% said they somewhat support it. Only 11% strongly oppose the measure, and 9% somewhat oppose. Republicans are more likely than Democrats to support the use of the National Guard, but a large majority of Democrats, 63%, either strongly or somewhat support it as well. African-American voters are evenly split on the use of the National Guard. 43% of polled African-American voters either strongly oppose or somewhat oppose use of the National Guard. Hispanic voters support the use of the National Guard as well, 54% strongly or somewhat. They say a smaller majority of Americans, 58%, support the use of the U.S. military to supplement city police forces. Republicans are again more likely. Listen, if you've been following my channel over the past several years, then none of this will surprise you because I have repeatedly said this will happen. As Antifa escalated their tactics and brought insurgency to our streets, it was only a matter of time before regular Americans who live in the suburbs and vote Democrat even just want to go to the mall and get that cheeseburger. I want to relax after a hard day's work. I want to know that my kids and my family are safe and they'll have a better life. It was only a matter of time before these people said, enough, please send in the military. We're at 58% of voters saying as such. And I believe 71% was the number of individuals. 71% of voters want the National Guard. These people are now begging for military intervention because of the escalating tactics of the far left extremists and those affiliated with Antifa. It's exactly what you could expect to happen. What comes next is predictable and it gets scary. But in all fairness, I want to show you a conflicting poll, which I believe is wrong and harder to use as a data point. YouGov says 52% say Trump's plan to deploy U.S. military in American cities is inappropriate. That's actually not true. It doesn't say that. What the poll actually says is that it's inappropriate for Trump to say he will do it. I know this may be, arguing semantics or, getting into the nitty gritty, maybe looking into it too deep. I can't look at this poll and tell you anything definitive because I don't know why people would say yes or no to this. There's a possibility some of these people said Trump should just do it and shouldn't talk about it. There's a lot of people who said Trump is all bark and no bite. So maybe they're saying Trump should just be doing it. Perhaps it is as simple as to say that YouGov found a conflicting poll, but I couldn't draw a conclusion from this. And I hope you understand you can take it for how you want. That's why I'm showing it to you. I know people are going to be like, Tim's denying this, the polling and to make. No. I'm showing you on purpose to make sure you can have the context. But even within this poll, 41% say it's appropriate for Trump to say he will deploy the U.S. military on American cities. And I'll tell you why. Our businesses are being destroyed, first from the coronavirus, now from the rioting, and people just want to live. They just want to live, man. How many people just wanted to go ride their skateboard through the streets and they couldn't do it for months? They're frustrated. They're terrified. They're angry. And they want something to be done about this because Bill de Blasio has failed. Interestingly, Andrew Cuomo of New York agrees. In this breaking story I have from the Post Millennial, New York Governor Cuomo threatens to displace Mayor de Blasio and bring in the National Guard. De Blasio said the National Guard would only make things worse. I don't know who de Blasio thinks his voters are or who he's trying to pander to. This has gone beyond getting reelected. Do your job. And your job is to protect the people. And when thousands of people, this is what happened last night. Thousands of people formed roving packs of individuals looting stores up and down the streets of New York. 700 got arrested. Now is not the time to defend the fringe faction of looters who are rampaging through your streets. Now is the time to protect the good citizens. This is just one city and one example. But these protests are happening in 30 plus cities. We have 29 states with some kind of emergency declaration or National Guard presence. The Millennial writes, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has said that given the failure of Mayor Bill de Blasio to get control of New York City last night, he may take action to remove the mayor from his post. New York City is no stranger to peaceful protest. And as a peaceful city with a large population, protests happen with relative frequency. However, the protests that began several days ago have given way to riots and criminal activity. Cuomo said, quote, I believe the mayor underestimates the scope of the problem. I think he underestimates the duration of the problem, and I don't think they used enough police to address the situation, because it's inarguable that it was not addressed last night. What happened in New York City was inexcusable. Here we have two politicians desperately pleading for re-election, and I think it's disgusting. The reason why I will call out Bill de Blasio is that he's pandering and refusing to take action. He's saying, it'll make things worse. It'll make things worse. People are destroying your city. Okay, it's not an issue of suppressing rights. It's an issue of the National Guard protecting rights. It's not about protecting property. It's about protecting the peaceful protests that the National Guard has actually spoken up in defense of. There have been problems with the National Guard so far, and it worries me it does. But how can we have peaceful protest when roving gangs are looting and destroying everything and taking advantage of this? Andrew Cuomo, the governor, has pointed out there are peaceful protesters in New York, and he's right. I hope you've all seen the video of the people in, I think it was DC, I'm not sure, who captured the Antifa guy and stopped him. My respect to all the peaceful protesters who are standing up for what they believe in. But these things give way to riots, and that's why we need to secure them. And so, yeah, you can disrupt, you can have civil disruption, you can go out, even though it flies in the face of all the COVID precautions, sure, whatever. But we need something more. But Andrew Cuomo is a flip-flopper. And I'll be fair here, but take a look at this tweet. Cuomo said the president is calling out the American military against American citizens. He used the military to push out a peaceful protest so he could have a photo op at a church. It's all just a reality TV show for this president. Shameful. Completely absurd. And Cuomo now saying he's going to displace de Blasio to bring the National Guard is a tidbit hypocritical. Okay, you can argue. The National Guard is different from the military. But who was out in D.C. clearing out those protesters? I mean, listen, I don't think it matters if it's Army or National Guard. It's relatively the same thing, right? Overturning the police, bringing in more forces, or I should say working with those forces. So it does seem a tad hypocritical that these polls come out. This is what many conservatives have brought up. He says this. The Morning Consult poll starts gaining more prominence because I believe it came out last night. And then all of a sudden he's like, no, I think I'm going to have to do this. Meanwhile, the people of Philadelphia, the people of Florida are taking action in their own hands. Residents stocking up on guns say they'll defend against looters. In this tweet from Jack Posobiec, he says rooftop Phillies in Philadelphia. It's the metro area where I live. People are on their rooftops with AR-15s. The other day, there was a series of explosions. People don't know what it was. Just throughout the night, explosions going off. I don't know what this is. They say on the news that people were stealing ATMs and no one could stop them. If the police can't stop widespread explosions from going off, then yeah, we need the National Guard. And when you don't have the National Guard, what do you get? Rooftop Phillies. Over in Florida, something interesting happened. The sheriff has warned potential rioters. The people of Polk County like their guns. And beyond that, he said that he hopes the people use them. Here's what he said. According to the story from WATE, Florida sheriff addressed rumors on social media of riot activity trickling into residential neighborhoods Monday, warning would-be agitators that the people of Polk County like guns, they have guns. I would tell them, if you value your life, You probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, said Sheriff Grady Judd. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be inside their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes tonight and try to steal them to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of their house with their guns. Whoa! Talk about a bold statement. But that's where we're at. In 3 months, 6 million guns sold. The American people, I can totally understand why they want the National Guard coming in. All of these people who have said they want gun control for the past several years, maybe even decades, many of them now going and buying weapons because the National Guard isn't there. More so because the police have failed. Governor Cuomo has said the police and de Blasio have failed, and he wants to call in the National Guard. When the people of this country realize you can't call anyone, you live in New York, there's no one to call, what do you think they do? It's a viral tweet from a progressive writer who last year said something like, now's the best time to talk about, or actually I think it may have been recent, now's the best time to talk about gun violence, they said. And then they posted another tweet where they said there was a tense standoff with their neighbors and rioters, so they called 911. And the police said, sir, the city is under attack. What would you have us do? Do what you have to do, and then hung up. In New York City, they said this. I think back to all of the liberal friends I had who had asked me in the past, is there any reason to own a gun? I have a friend who actually asked me that once. And there's a story I often tell, you may have seen it on the IRL podcast recently, about how I lived in Miami, in the Redlands, which is about 40 minutes outside the city. And someone hopped the fence. We have a 6-foot high fence. Someone hopped in, was snooping around our property. It's a big property. It was a barn. What do? Who do we call? There's no police anywhere. You see, when you live in the country, when you live far away, I think this is why a lot of conservatives get it. You live far away, you have to rely on yourself. Where's your food? How much do you have? What work are you doing to prepare for the worst? No one there will protect you. There's no police. Liberals in big cities are getting a hard wake-up call right now when they realize what life is like when there aren't police. What do? Now we're seeing, according to this story, 40%. Let me try and find the right number. A recent survey of firearm retailers shows us that 40% of these gun buyers are buying a firearm for the first time. Mark Oliva, spokesman for the group, said in a statement, of those first-time gun owners, 40% are women, and these buyers are overwhelmingly purchasing handguns for personal protection. I've got some horrifying stories that I don't know if I can show you, but I don't think I can play them. I'll just tell you them. A retired police officer killed outside of a pawn shop the other day. Looters. There was a rioting happening in Minneapolis. Looters came in, and the pawn shop owner is now charged with murder for trying to stop one of them. These things are happening all over the place. There's a video, viral video right now on Twitter of an Asian man with an AR-15 pointing it at a looter. I can't show these clips as YouTube won't let me, but you need to know what's happening all around you in this country. Let me show you what happened in 2014. This is a story from the new inquiry called In Defense of Looting. I've talked about it quite a bit. I want to explain to you now in reference to Trump's statements about the military coming in and why Americans want it to happen. When I was in Ferguson, they were defending the businesses, the local people, the people from Ferguson. They didn't want to see their community burnt to the ground. Outside forces were coming in and looting, much like we're seeing in most of these other cities right now. Opportunists are coming in to steal what they can. Well, what does the activist left do? They write stories like this. They say, for most of America's history, one of the most righteous anti-white supremacist tactics available was looting. This is a lie. And you'll understand why it's a lie if you look over to the website It's Going Down, which has a manual describing or giving you instructions on how to form an Antifa cell. Trump has said that Antifa will be designated terrorists. Many people on the left have defended this, especially in media. Do you know why? It's actually quite simple. According to this handbook published by It's Going Down, to form an active cell, you must have no name. That way they can't formally declare you a group. You must obfuscate your hierarchy and depending on how you set things up, keep it cloudy so that no one knows. Only let in people you trust and don't have an open, enrollment process. Everyone must be hard vetted. And they say you must pretend to be a part of other liberal groups like Black Lives Matter. The reason why they write in defense of looting is because they want to create cover for these fringe extremist far left cells that operate, that are funded, that organize, then show up to peaceful protests and commandeer them for their ideological gain. You see, we've seen all these videos popping up where Black Lives Matter activists and peaceful protesters have been trying to stop Antifa, far left extremists. We call them Antifa, but it's a broad spectrum of what this represents. Typically, it means the people who fly the banner and have the tattoos. Peaceful protesters have been calling them out. Black Lives Matter has been calling them out. That's a problem for the extremists who need this as cover to foment some kind of revolution in their minds. So what they do is they have allies in media who write things like this, saying that, no, looting isn't, just reckless destruction. It's fighting against the machine and the system. No, this is a way to justify the riots, to encourage people to go out. Because I'll tell you this, the regular people I hear about, the friends of mine who say they want to go and protest, they're the snowflakes. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They're the people who think, they're the beautiful, unique snowflakes with a voice who want their voice to be heard. Respectable. I mean it. But together, it forms an avalanche. Now, you can have a pile of snow and it's fine. There needs to be a catalyst for the avalanche and those who would misuse it. And that's what we have with these pieces in defense of looting. These are the people who want to convince you that the looting is okay. When you come out to protest and it turns into riots and looting, don't be mad. Don't be upset. Please come back out. Because if you stay home, we can't keep doing what we're doing to destroy everything. That's what they say. Because their goal is simple. They don't care for the justice. They don't care for any of this. They want to just strip everything down and destroy it. That's why they've been planting bricks all over cities, we believe. We've seen some evidence. That's why they've been giving out weapons and destroying homeless people's property. When you come out and protest, they use that as cover to engage in these riots. If you, as an individual protester, get scared of the looting and rioting and feel bad about it, so you don't come out anymore, well, now they no longer have the cover they need to engage in this behavior. Thus, they must tell you it's defensible. It's not. Small businesses in the black community being destroyed is not saving anyone. And they tell you the same lies. If you care more about the looting than this black man's life who was taken away, then you're part of the problem. It's just not true. If you as an individual truly care about protecting the innocent, then you care about the man who lost his life and the livelihoods of the people in the black community who are suffering and having their homes destroyed by these far left extremists. We now have people across this country in a variety of videos taking up arms to defend their communities. Seattle, Washington suburb keeping guard from looters in their neighborhood. We have this video. I don't know where this is from. Upland, it says. Let's see. This man is a reporter out of, it doesn't really say, unfortunately. I'm not sure where this place is. It looks like it may be Florida, but we can see a man with an AR-15. Apparently, he got arrested for it, though. People across this country are taking up arms to defend against the looters, and the activists and the extremists will tell you it's because they want to defend some kind of white supremacy or some other nonsense. That's just not true, man. They're telling you lies, and they're feeding you insane things. Donald Trump came out the other day, and he took a photo in front of the church. And strangely, some bishop condemned him for it, saying he was using their imagery or whatever. You know what? If you care more about Trump taking a picture in front of a church than the fact that far left extremists tried to destroy a church last night, you are part of the problem. Now, I'm being a bit hyperbolic. I think a lot of people are concerned about the silliness of what they view as a photo op. I'm not going to give you my personal opinion, but I'll just tell you this. Trump didn't apparently order any protests to be gassed or anything like that. It was curfew, and the police cleared out the protesters in front of the White House. You can be for or against it. That's not the point. Donald Trump came out to take a photo in front of the church to show that our national landmark still stands. The far left extremists did not destroy it, and he did it to show that he is in control. The U.S. government is in control of what's happening. The rioters are not dictating anything. They were saying last night he was a coward hiding in his bunker. He proved them wrong. You can hate him for it. You can scream all you want. Whatever. That's why he did it. And as much as the people are saying they hate it, Trump spoke and said that he would do this. The polls show the overwhelming majority want the National Guard out. And you can argue 41% or 58% want the military out. overriding posse comitatus with the Insurrection Act in all likelihood, which is rarely done. I believe it was done in 1992 was the last time. I'm not sure. I don't know where we are heading now, but it does feel like we are in the early stages of civil war because extremists are planting weapons, because media organizations are defending the protests and Antifa and the riot. I'm sorry, not the protests, the riots. They're defending it outright. How can we stand if the president and the federal government says the riots are wrong, but the media says the riots are right? How can we stand when half of the people say Trump is a dictator going after his own people, peaceful protesters, and the other half is saying they don't care if it's a protest or not, send in the military? We can't. We cannot stand. So I hope you've taken the necessary precautions, but I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I'll see you all then.